So here we are at the backside of Miller Plant Sciences, and today we're going to teach you guys how to press some plants. So the first thing we're going to press is this little tiny plant right here. So we're going to teach you guys how to press this plant. Okay, so here we have our small plant that we're going to be pressing, and we have the press itself. We have some pruners in case we need to trim pieces off, and I have a small wash bucket full of water. Normally you wouldn't be pressing this until you had fully dried it. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of peel back a little bit of the soil to expose the root ball as best we can without breaking any roots. So we're just going just past the surface level. Normally if I had like a small trowel or something, I'd use that to dig it up. In this case I don't. We never use our pruners to dig. Never. That is a very important point. You will dull them, you will destroy them, and your PI will be very mad at you. So, never use your pruners to dig. In this case, I know this plant personally, and I know it has a relatively small root system. It's not super expansive, and so I'm just going to dig down and try to scoop underneath it and get the whole thing up in a single clump. This one didn't go very deep and decided to go wide apparently, which is unusual. Probably because we're in some really compacted soil here. So first thing I'm going to do, shake it off, get the worst of the soil and things off the roots, being careful not to break the roots if they're attached. So you can see we have a fairly long root system there, right? And so what we're now going to do is we're going to rinse it off in the bucket. Usually I just give it some good shakes. And that's starting to look pretty good. Pick out any dead stuff. I'm actually going to rinse my fingers there. Try to keep the vegetative parts separate from the roots without breaking it. And give it a couple more shakes just to really make sure it's clean. And you want to get as many of the pieces of dirt out as possible. All right, and I've selected this plant specifically because it actually does have an inflorescence there. Also, it's nice and thick and easy to work with. All right, so now I'm going to set this aside in a relatively clean area while I prep the other things. So we want to leave no trace from where, or as much as we can. Obviously, we remove the plant. So we left a small hole here, so we're going to fill it back in as best we can and try to make it look like we were never here at all. So now that that's done, we're going to take our press, and we have our straps here, and we're going to loosen our straps. Typically I like to leave them just loose like this rather than pulling them off fully, and just loop them over the ends. And then we take our press, flip over the cardboard, flip over the blotting paper, and expose our pre-cut newspaper. Now, if it's windy, this can be a huge challenge. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use my knee and hold it down on one side. I'll then take our freshly cleaned, rinsed plant, and I'll kind of take a look at it, hid my pruners for myself. So as we're pressing, we want to make this as clear cut. We want to have the identifiable features clear and easy to identify. So the first thing I'm going to do is, honestly, with this one, it's so big and bushy, I'm probably just going to cut it right in half. Some herbaria would like scowl at this and freak out, but in this case, it'll provide a nice cleaner specimen. So now we have two pieces. We have a root system. We've got the plant cut in half, but it's really hard to tell what the leaf arrangement is of this thing, or what, if it's compound or simple leaved. And so now that I've divided it a little bit, you can see that there's multiple sprouts coming from the base. So I'm actually going to pull a small one off and separate it out as its own piece. So in this case, we have our overarching plant We have a few leaves that have fallen off that are compound. So I'm going to have one that's facing downward, one that's facing up. Now we have a plantlet. So this is a piece that is entirely separate, or it's like an individual plant. So if it was, still growing in the ground, we could plant that back in and it would probably resprout and grow just fine. And then we have this guy here, which is the other half of this top one. And it's going to be kind of hard to tell. So this is kind of a tricky one because it's so bushy. But we're essentially going to try to flatten it as much as we can. And then we're going to slowly fold this over while kind of trying to keep everything flattened in the right direction. And we put our blotter paper back. Our corrugated cardboard back. And the top of our press back. And then the first thing you're going to do is loop these straps back on. And you're going to pull them tight, as tight as you can get them one-handed, just so it holds everything in place. Some people have been using ratchet straps for this to really get a hard clamp down. And here comes the most fun part. So now that we've got it generally tightened, we're going to stand up and we're going to step right on the press. This is why it's really important that you have a good high quality press, because if you have a bad press, it'll snap right in half. And so normally you'd have a second person come and pull these straps tight for you. But if you're by yourself collecting in the woods, sometimes you don't have a second person, and that's okay. And so you can pull these up. This is where ratcheting straps come in handy. Step on it. And step on the clip. And that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get it by myself. And that's how you press a plant.